If you're like me, you probably looked at the selection of non-mega mods in Regulation MB and thought, damn, these mods kinda suck, huh? I mean, we have Goldango. No, just kidding, it was deserved. We have Grimmsnarl. You know what, actually, I can get behind this change. We have Annihilate. But I bet you weren't thinking about this guy. Vileplume is a surprising addition to Regulation MB. And by that I say it's surprising because I never thought in a million years that they would think about bringing this guy in because he's not all that. Like it's kinda just a worse Lilligant, with both being sleep powder bots with After You as an option, boosted in Sun by Chlorophyll. But you can't be worse than Lilligant if Lilligant is not in the game, right? As it turns out, a max speed Chlorophyll boosted timid nature Vileplume is just fast enough to outspeed Mega Aerodactyl. Essentially, it outspeeds everything in the game in Sun. It packs Sleep Powder and After You, which are the two moves that made Lilligant a standout in VGC. And the poison typing is kind of useful because it's able to live hits from fairy types. I thought it would be fun to design a team around it, and I didn't think much of it until I reached Master Ball tier with it, which was a surprise even to me. Well, not necessarily the part about reaching Master Ball, but the fact that I reached it with Vileplume of all things I thought was pretty cool. This team also has a different wacky option in Choice Scarf Final Gambit Staraptor, which you're gonna see the applications for later. The rest of the team I'd say is a pretty solid Trick Room core with Mega Mawa as the sweeper. I thought this team was interesting enough to give it a spotlight, so just like that, don't forget to like and subscribe and enjoy the video. Alright, hello. So today we're going to do something a little different than usual because I'm going to be commentating my play for this team specifically because I thought it would be interesting to do that because I feel like a lot of my content is just like playing for fun and sometimes I do wonder if I can try something else. There's nothing wrong with playing for fun, by the way, but I just thought this would also be a fun exercise for me to kind of just like look at my replays to get better at the game. So, I'm gonna be walking you down to my thought process for some of these games. So, first of all, for this game specifically, it was a Mega Floette Charizard team. If you were to play this team that I have, this would be the lead that I would usually go for, and it's Farigiraf and Staraptor. Now, why is this a good lead? Is because I have Final Gambit on my Staraptor, which helps us into a lot of the Mega Evolutions, because a lot of people are gonna see Staraptor and think this is Mega Staraptor, so I should, like, send in my Floette or send in my Charizard, go in and do damage, but they also see for the Farigiraf and think, I can't bring Tailwind into this because otherwise it's gonna Trick Room. Which is the thought process for both of these. I have Mawa and Torque on the back for this game specifically because it helps into the Garchomp and the Sinistcha that we see here. So we have this lead. This is a Floette Incineroar lead, which is just about what I expected. So the good thing about this lead is that they can't really fake me out because I have my Armor Tail right there from Farigiraf, so I'm free to just click Trick Room and then Final Gambit the Floette. Even if they protect the Floette, this is a fine turn for me, and now they proceed to Mega Evolve, which is just about what I expected from that. But yeah, even if they Mega, this is fine for me, because I'm Choice Scarf, so I would outspeed it. They also can't fake me out, as you can see right there, because they completely forgot I have Armor Tail, and then we get the Final Gambit off, and Floette goes down. So a thing of note that I'm probably going to pause the footage there to show you is that Mega Floette cannot ever survive a Final Gambit from max HP Staraptor. A lot of mods actually can't, which I've already explained in the early part of this video. So then right there, as you see, the Final Gambit goes in, it destroys the Floette, and I get to set up my Trick Room. And at that point, they kind of just forfeit the game right there, which honestly, I don't know why you ever forfeit into a game like this. Even if it looks really bad, I think You always want to play your game because you never know what could happen. So let's move on to the next game, I guess. Alright, so I decided in post as I was recording this video that I didn't really have enough Vileplume content for you, so I decided to give you a bonus one for this one, which will probably show up sooner into the video anyway, just to have a little bit more of Vileplume. So, this is another matchup that we head into. This was a Sand Metagross team, which is an interesting idea, but that's not what we're here for. So I think we get to just have Farigiraf into this type of team because of the Incineroar. Can't really fake us out. The Tyranitar we should be able to survive a knockoff from. And Excadrill T-Tar kind of just cannot actually fight this. But I go back and forth between a couple ideas at this start because I still want Torkoal on this matchup because I want to win the weather control. And this is a Vileplume game, so we're gonna bring Vileplume. But I ended up deciding that I'm putting Torkoal in third, not necessarily in first, so that I get to be able to switch it in just in case. And we bring, I believe I bring King Gambit in this game. Yes, I do. Because it matches up well into Excadrill, into Tyranitar. It forces Incineroar to not be here. The Sidisha does not want to fight us. And the Rotom is still going to take a solid chunk of damage from it. They lead Rotom Excadrill, which is about the type of lead that you should probably expect from teams like this, because Sand and Weather Wars are going to not always lead their Weather Center, because they don't want to immediately lose the war. So, in this regard, I kind of just decide to Sleep Powder the Excadrill, I believe, and then we click Trick Room, because even if we switch in Torkoal and we're Chlorophyll boosted, that's still completely fine, but I want to take a Sleep immediately. So the Sleep Powder goes through into the Metagross as they switch out Excadrill into Metagross, which goes to sleep, which is nice. Volt Switch does very little damage to Vileplume, but obviously they do this for repositioning because I think they expected that Farigiraf would have Thunderbolt just to do a solid amount of damage, or they thought I would click a Grass move into the Rotom because it is pretty much exposed. So they bring back Excadrill as we click Trick Room. So Excadrill is a non-issue because this is Trick Room mode now, and we get to have Vileplume sit there, probably click another Sleep Powder, which is the objective, and we switch out Farigiraf into the Torkoal, which I actually make a small mistake here, because in doing so, because I clicked up Trick Room, my Vileplume is actually moving last. So that's a little bit of a problem, as they click Mega Evolution into their Metagross, which makes sense, because that is the main piece of offense that they have into this team, so you might as well click Mega. But it turns out that my mistake doesn't super matter, as they click Protect anyway, so that Sleep Powder goes into Protect. And that means that Vileplume is kind of just free to leave. So we bring back Farigiraf, and we click Eruption, probably? Actually, I go back and forth between switching out King Gambit and then clicking buttons. They switch in Excadrill, which is fine, into the Tyranitar, I mean. That's also fine. I switch out Vileplume. Initially I thought I was going to switch it out to Farigiraf, but I decided to go with King Gambit because I have Low Kick. Eruption goes through. Does a solid chunk, does a small chunk into Tyranitar, but most importantly KOs the Metagross, which is great, because that means they're out of a Mega Evolution. The Sand Buffer doesn't super matter, as they bring back Excadrill. The good news is that Trick Room is still up, so both of my threats are still like super strong at the moment. At that point, I suspect that they are Focus Sash on their Excadrill, because it hasn't taken any damage, and especially because, well, that is kind of the standard set right now. So I go about a couple options. I could kowtow into the Excadrill, try to bring it up, exposes it, and there's we switch in. Yeah, no, I click kowtow into Excadrill, switch out Torkoal into a Farigiraf, which is fine. At that point, I kind of just like ran out of time, but I still managed to do what I wanted to do. He protects the Excadrill, which, to be honest, I could have expected. The Kowtow Cleave goes into Drill, as the Low Kick goes into my Gambit, which is somewhat okay, because we get to have our Chople Berry. At that part, I think I make a small bit of a mistake. As I click Low Kick into the... I believe I click Low Kick into Excadrill after deliberating clicking to T-Tar. I should have clicked into the Tyranitar, but because I thought that this Excadrill was Focus Sash, I kind of just decided to just do damage, break the Sash. Their Low Kick goes into King Gambit, which sucks, but that was a mistake on my part. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes it just happens. You will never get 100% of your calls right, but you can always try to just get at least 90% of them. Twin Beam goes into Rotom. That is still decent damage, all things considered, as the Trick Room goes down. So, the good news is that since Trick Room is down, and I have Vileplume and a Torkoal, I get to use Vileplume again and just have fun with it. So I decide I'm going to click Solar Beam into, because it's kind of just free to click into it, but I go into Tyranitar because getting rid of the sand is nice. At that point, I kind of mistakenly think, oh, there's a chance that he could win if he can Mega, but I just completely forgot that the Mega was already Metagross. So I have no worries about that anywhere here, which is very nice, actually. So that means that if I can get rid of either Rotom or Tyranitar, I kind of just win the Weather Bar. But I think that Tyranitar is the more pressing of the two, because I have Sun either way, so that Hydro Pump for Rotom, if it decides to click it, it's just not gonna do that much. Solar Beam goes into the Tyranitar. There we go. And it goes down. And this is pretty much the best case scenario, plus we get a clip of Vileplume, which you always want to see. Okay. And it clicks Will-O-Wisp into the Vileplume, which is annoying, but whatever. Not the worst thing ever. As we get to see the Excadrill coming out, which is nice. So that means this is a great opportunity to see what this tech is. So after you, what it does is when you click it, the next opponent, whoever you click it into will move next, no matter what speed tier you have. So clicking after you here into the Torkoal means that it gets to move before Excadrill and Rotom, click its Eruption, and actually take it down, surprisingly, because I thought it was going to be Focus Sash, and it turns out it was probably more like Life Orb, which is starting to pop up, so I'm not too surprised, but it was pretty funny in the actual recording. He clicks Hydro Pump into the Torkoal, which, again, because of the sun, is not doing too much, and that actually lets Vileplume kind of just take the game from here with a Solar Beam here, and just in case for some reason I click Solar Beam as well for Torkoal, because I thought it was kind of just funny. So the Solar Beam goes, Vileplume comes in, and this is a really strong performance from Vileplume getting 2 KOs and setting up Torkoal for a third. As the Rotom goes down from the Solar Beam, it just goes down right here, and we've essentially won the game because of Vileplume, which is really nice to see. And now we're off to the next game. Okay, so this is more of a slightly weirder team, as we have the Talonflame right here, which can't really set up right here the Tailwind because I have the Farigiraf threatening to click Trick Room once again. The Meowscarada and Raichu is what I should expect, because like those are your best offensive options, assuming this is Raichu Y. They have Milotic, which could be annoying for the Mawile. I think I bring the same lead just to give a solid idea of what I would want into this type of team. I think I bring Torkoal to this one. Yeah, I think I do, because Torkoal in this situation helps into Meowscarada, and it helps lower the damage from Milotic and Basculegion. So as you can see, even if there's water types and stuff like that, bring Torkoal. It's not always about like type matchups, especially because I also have Solar Beam on it, but that's a whole different thing. Sneasler is also not a threat because I have Twin Beam on my Farigiraf, and in that case you kind of just get to set up for free. So now the game starts. They send in Raichu Meowscarada, which I was a little bit surprised about, but that's still mostly fine because I get to lead in, click my Scarf into Final Gambit. Also, another important thing about this is that even if the opponent protects and I click Final Gambit, this is still fine, because if they protect, that means they're not attacking. That means whatever, my Farigiraf is usually safe to click Trick Room. As you'll see probably in this situation, there is one situation where it isn't safe. First of all, the Raichu goes down, which is just about what is expected. It's the other thing about Final Gambit, as I was going to mention, is that I don't lose more. They lose more than I do. Also, first of all, that is Trick Room Meowscarada, which is annoying, although this is still mostly fine because now that is a Psychic type Meowscarada, which should not be a problem for neither of my mods, so I can just bring Mawile, because that Flower Trick is not going to be stabbed. They bring Milotic, that sucks, but we have Thunderbolt on Farigiraf, and this is fine. The other thing, as I was saying about even if I Final Gambit it into a Protect, that means that one of them is not attacking, which makes Farigiraf pretty safe. So I think in this situation I just Trick Room again, because if they click Trick Room with Meowscarada again, that is kind of just wasting their turn. Although I think I'm in that position, I think I'm debating if I'm clicking Thunderbolt or not. But I think I've decided against it, and then we Protect into the Mawile. Yeah, okay, then goes Flower Trick. It's not stab anymore because of Protean, so that's not doing a lot. It's still like a solid amount considering this is a crit, but this is still not a lot. That Milotic is +2, which is what I was more concerned with. But we survive because this is a really bulky Farigiraf, I would know. And we get to set up Trick Room. So, at this point, the main concern for this team becomes the Milotic. So, I get to just like damage it as much as possible. The Thunderbolt into a Play Rough would do enough damage, if not to KO, to at least bring it down really low so that the next hit is going to hurt a lot. That Play Rough goes in, and that does way more than I thought it would, which is fine. The Thunderbolt should pick up Milotic at this range. That's awesome. And Milotic goes down. which is better than what I expected. He clicks Trick Room on Meowscarada. At this point, I've snowballed enough so that I don't super need the Trick Room anymore, but it would still be nice to have it, especially because of this guy. So I think in this situation, the only thing that could hurt me is a rogue wave crash. Or because I should survive a Last Respects from Basculegion on at least the Mawile, and at least like a maybe. The Thunderbolt into more damage. I think at this point I'm really not worried about the Meowscarada. I should be able to still pick it off pretty easily. Pick off the Basculegion pretty easily. So I decided I'm going to bring Torkoal in, just in case he clicks Wave Crash instead of Last Respects. I survived this, and the Flower Trick goes into the Torkoal. Would it have mattered if it went into the Mawile? Maybe not, because this did a lot into it. So Player Off into this is naturally going to do a lot of damage, and I think, if I remember correctly, I just click Heat Wave here and then like probably try to do some more damage. But I think at this point they kind of just realized that it's pretty much over, so they're just going to forfeit. And now we'll move into the next game. Alright, so we're back here, and this is a Mawile rain team that we're going up against with Archaludon and Swampert. Now, I actually think this is if I remember correctly, I actually think this is a great showcase for Vileplume, because in this context, the idea when you're going up against a different weather setting team is to fight for weather control with Torkoal, which is a perfect opportunity for Vileplume because it gets to abuse Sunny Day, well, Drought in general, as much as it possibly can with Chlorophyll, and it has a very, very strong matchup, especially to Swampert and Politoed. The Archaludon is not, like, super dangerous, because we have access to our own Torkoal, which can do a lot of damage into it. They send in Sinisha and Archaludon, which is actually like a really strong lead, and honestly I think I should have just led Torkoal there, but I was concerned that the Politoed was going to switch in, so I decided not to, which I think is still kind of fair. I think I'm going to switch in the Torkoal now. Actually, I think I'm still considering if I'm clicking Twin Beam or not. But I think I clicked Twin Beam here just to get some bonus damage, that we can Sleep Powder the Archaludon. Politoed gets switched in because, yeah, it kind of has to. That's how they get Electroshot online. The good news with that is that we pretty much get a free turn on Vileplume, because Electroshot is not doing anything to Vileplume. That is going straight into the Farigiraf, which we survive, because Farigiraf is broken. Well, not broken. The Sleep Powder miss is not that big of a deal. It sucks, but it's not the worst thing ever. In fact, this actually helps a little bit. Well, not necessarily helps, but like this is actually completely fine, because I still get to switch in Torkoal this turn, and we get to click Solar Beam into Politoed, because now it's kind of just exposed to Vileplume. And we switch in Torkoal right there, which is good for us. We get the Sunny Day. They click Helping Hand, probably into a Electroshot or a Dragon Pulse, but we get the Solar Beam off, get some really strong damage into it, especially into a Politoed that is going to explode to Solar Beam, and Vileplume takes a KO, and that is just why we love Vileplume in this house. Dragon Pulse goes into the Vileplume. That's actually completely fine by me, because at this point we have won the Weather War. Torkoal gets to set up. Torkoal gets to click buttons as much as it wants, and we get to set it up with our little flower friend over here. Mawile gets to choose in, and I decided, and I think it's going to Sucker Punch. But I think it's going to Sucker Punch the Vileplume because it's at 1 HP and it's trying to pick it up. So I get to click Eruption into After You on my Torkoal as they Mega Evolve. And they Sucker Punch. So if they Sucker Punch Torkoal, this would still have been somewhat fine, but we probably wouldn't have taken any KOs here. I could have clicked Heat Wave to prevent that as well. And we take both KOs. We take both KOs from the Eruption. And yeah, that's what I could have just saved the clip. And they forfeit, which is great for... This is a great showcase of how Vileplume can kind of work. And yeah, no, honestly, this is kind of just a general, like, showcase of the team. Which is, this is a pretty good team, obviously. So we're gonna move to the next match. Okay. And the next match is a Mega Gengar offense team, which is really interesting because I feel like I haven't seen a lot of Mega Gengar lately. This is the kind of team where King Gambit gets to shine on this team specifically. Okay, so I think at this point I kind of just think that Staraptor is probably not going to be brought in because it has a Gengar and a Goldingo, which are both like ghost types target. Final Gambiting into a Whimsicott is not super worth it. And both King Gambit and Garchomp can probably survive it if they're bulky enough. So I think this is the point where I kind of just click Trick Room and have Torkoal kind of just open up with some good damage, probably with a Heat Wave of sorts. And then we have Mawile and King Gambit just clean it up in the end. Now, another issue with Vileplume specifically, at least for this set in particular, is that Whimsicott Tailwind teams kind of become a problem towards it because Vileplume gets all its speed from Sunny Day and it just outspeeds a Mega Aerodactyl. So a Tailwind is not going to be something you're going to be outspeeding a lot. Vileplume is something that you would bring to like the Rain offense team that we saw earlier, or something like Sand or stuff like that, where all the speed control goes into the weather. Although I think you could have Vileplume have a Sludge Bomb instead of Pollen Puff, and it would still do pretty okay into this type of team because it gets to chip off Whimsicott. Anyways, they leave Gengar, Whimsicott. I expect the Gengar to just Mega Evolve and probably do like a good chunk of damage. I think Torkoal can live the combination of Moonblast and Shadow Ball, but I'm not 100% sure on it, especially if a special defense drop comes in, which would be awful. But even in that case, we get the Trick Room off, which would be quite nice. And if they don't attack the Torkoal, we still get to hit them with a pretty strong Heat Wave, because I'm not clicking Eruption into something like this where all my damage is into keeping the Torkoal staying alive. At this point, we're kind of just leaving Torkoal to just do opening damage with a Heat Wave, maybe with Weather Ball, but in this case it would have been with Heat Wave. They click Shadow Ball. That does a lot more than I was hoping, but the Moonblast goes into Farigiraf luckily, which I think at this range we would have still survived, because it did this little to a Farigiraf. The Heat Wave goes in, that's really strong damage on the entire board. Like, really respectable damage when you think about it. That is Charcoal Torkoal for you. And then we click Trick Room, which is nice, because now that means that the Gengar is pretty much exposed to another Heat Wave, and we can probably like Helping Hand into the Torkoal just to add like additional bonus damage, just in case they switch in like a Garchomp, because it wouldn't want to switch in for free. Whimsicott is probably fainting at this part of the game, or I think they're gonna protect in this regard, but in that case it's still fine, because then the Whimsicott is likely fainting the next turn, and if they switch out into like a Kingambit or a Gengar, assuming that the Gengar switches out, which I think it probably will, because you don't want to lose your Mega immediately to the Torkoal opening, especially because I have Mawile in the back. So yeah, they switch out the Gengar, that brings in Garchomp, which is fine. This is their best option into the Torkoal, and yeah, they protect the Musikarp, which is pretty much what I expected. And now we get to click Heat Wave into it. Now, I could have clicked Wither Ball into it and did a lot more damage, but the all-around damage into the entire board, it's still doing like nearly half of Garchomp's HP, is like super nice. I think at this range, I think Twin Beam and a Heat Wave pretty much just KOs the Garchomp at this range. Whimsicott is likely dying unless we miss the Heat Wave, which we do on Garchomp, which sucks, but it's not like unwinnable bad, it's just annoying bad at this range. It would... The Twin Beam goes into the Garchomp. That is still very respectable damage, and it kind of confirms to me that a Heat Wave plus Twin Beam would have KO'd because it left it at 16%. That is an Earthquake. That's going to suck, especially for Torkoal. But even if we miss, oh well. We have other options in the back. And the Life Orb into Garchomp gets expelled, which kind of just proves us that this is Life Orb Garchomp. And that, if that's the case, and knowing that that's the case, that's still like decent damage for Rigraff to tank, because like, yeah, no, this is actually not even that bad. I think at this range, I don't completely remember what I just clicked. I'm gonna have to check in the post, or we're probably gonna see right now. But I think in my, my expectations is that they bring back Gengar, or they bring something like King Gambit, which we could deal with. They bring in the Gengar, so I brought my own King Gambit. So at that point, I kind of just look at my Trick Room turns, and I think, and I need to make a decision. I'm clicking Kowtow into Twin Beam, and I think there's a solid chance that they double protect. But even if that's the case, yeah, there's the double protect. They protect on both their Garchomp and Gengar, which is fine. Because this is not the last turn of Trick Room, there's another one after that. You click Twin Beam into Gengar, and at that point I'm kind of just wondering if they have King Gambit in the back. So I decide I can Twin Beam the Garchomp, but I feel like you want to keep Garchomp because of the King Gambit. So I'm Twin Beaming the Gengar, and then we click Kowtow. If he switches in his King Gambit into the Garchomp, like from the Garchomp slot, whatever, right? At least that Twin Beam is not going into nothing. It's going into the Gengar, which should get rid of it. I could have clicked Thunderbolt, but I didn't want to risk them not switching their Garchomp, which is the main thing, right? And they protect the Garchomp anyway, so we get to see they try to do the double protect again, but they failed. Kowtow goes into the Garchomp, this is fine. And Thunderbolt, which is what I ended up clicking. I thought I clicked Twin Beam, but I think I expected as well to Gambit. Should take out the Gengar though, which is completely fine. And in the back they have Goldengo, which is actually the best case scenario, because King Gambit can just not be attacked, can just not care about Goldengo immediately, because we just wall it with our Steel and Dark type. So at that point, I'm clicking Thunderbolt, just in case I get to get rid of it, and the Garchomp has to make a move. So I think I'm gonna Sucker Punch the Garchomp. If the Goldengo nasty plots, this is fine. Because, but if the Garchomp KOs the King Gambit, this is not fine. Like, that's the main guy that I want to get rid of. If they click Protect, we still get a hit enough. They do not click protect. This is completely fine. At that point, it would just be playing the Sucker Punch minigame. But either way, I can still live anything that Goldengo clicks on, which it ends up clicking Nasty Plot, which is just perfect. We click Thunderbolt. Does like barely a quarter, which is mostly fine for this photograph specifically because it's not like a super offensive photograph. We click Trick Room and then Sucker Punch. The reason I click Trick Room is because if he clicks Nasty Plot again, we get Trick Room off, and then the next turn I just start clicking Countdown Cleave, and then it's really over. They have to predict whether or not I'm clicking Sucker Punch or not on this turn if they want to keep the Goldengo alive. But I think at this point it's still pretty much over because I have something in the back, including something specifically like the Mawile that we showed, and then the Sucker Punch goes into Goldengo, gets rid of it, and that's gonna be the end of this little guy. So, let me know if you enjoyed these types of breakdowns. Like, this is the first time I'm doing one of these, and if you do like it, I'm gonna try to do more of them. Because, I don't know, it seems like an interesting idea. But with that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.